My name is Linda. I'm 32 years old, and last Saturday night, I stood in the grand ballroom of Greenwood Country Club, surrounded by 200 of the most powerful people in town. Crystal chandeliers poured golden light over white linen tables. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter echoed through polished walls. And my father stood at the podium smiling like a king. He had just finished a long speech about legacy, about 40 years of building an empire, about family pride. Then his eyes locked on me. For a moment, I thought he might surprise me. Maybe, just once, acknowledge his daughter for who she was. Instead, his voice cut across the room like a blade. "You," he said, his hand gesturing toward me, "are the biggest disgrace this family has ever known." The room froze. Silverware stilled. Whispers died. Even the jazz quartet faltered. 200 faces turned in my direction, waiting to see my reaction. Heat rose in my chest. Shame. Rage. A lifetime of swallowed words boiled over, and I realized in that instant there was no going back. I set down my champagne glass with deliberate precision, stood up slowly in my simple black dress, and smiled, though my hands were trembling. "Perfect," I said. "Then erase me from your will, too." Gasps rippled through the room, and just like that, decades of silence shattered, and my story truly began. But before that night shattered me, I had already lived years of quiet erasure. To understand how I reached that breaking point, you need to know the truth about my family. The Andersons, a name whispered with respect in this city for decades. My grandfather built the foundation, brick by brick, turning a small construction company into a real estate empire. My father, Robert, spent his life expanding it, until Anderson Development became one of the state's largest firms. He was celebrated, admired, a man who shaped skylines. My mother, Margaret, perfected the role of society wife, hosting dinners, chairing charities, smiling for magazine photographers, always polished, always flawless, always the image of grace. And then there was Michael, my older brother, Harvard Law, top of his class, partner at the most prestigious firm in town. He was everything they dreamed of. The golden boy destined to inherit the empire, the proof of their perfect legacy. And me? I was Linda, the disappointment they couldn't quite disguise. The girl who wanted crayons instead of blueprints, sketchbooks instead of case law. At every dinner table, every gathering, my achievements were dismissed with polite smiles. "Linda dabbles in design," they'd say, like my career was a hobby I'd outgrow. When I became a freelance graphic designer, they tolerated it, barely, always reminding me that one day I'd wake up and join the family business. Every Sunday dinner, I sat in silence. Michael's victories celebrated with applause, while my work, my passion, earned nothing more than a nod. It wasn't just neglect, it was erasure. A constant reminder that no matter what I created, it would never be enough in their world. That night at the country club, my father's words weren't new. They were just louder, crueler, a public echo of every private wound I'd carried for years. I built my freelance design career piece by piece, often working late nights while my family slept. Every small business client I landed felt like proof that my path, though different, was still real and worthy. But every Sunday dinner reminded me of the gap between their world of boardrooms and my world of pixels. Dad would ask Michael about his latest big cases, then glance at me and say nothing, moving on quickly. Mom tried polite smiles, but her words cut sharp. "That little art hobby of yours, are you still doing it?" I smiled back, swallowing the sting, and nodded politely. Because arguing never changed their view, it only deepened it. Michael, to his credit, sometimes asked about my projects, but even then, it sounded more like pity than curiosity. For 11 years, I kept building, quietly, steadily, patiently. No headlines, no applause, but steady growth and recognition. My designs helped nonprofits raise thousands in donations, gave startups an identity, and helped them compete with giants. Yet none of it existed in the Anderson family narrative, where only skyscrapers, court victories, and stock portfolios mattered. The more I gave, the less I seemed to belong. At family gatherings, I became the polite ghost at the table. Even during Michael's wedding, I contributed quietly, designing custom menus and signage without my name attached. Guests praised the decor, my parents smiled graciously, but no one ever knew the work had been mine. By year 10, my business was profitable, even thriving. Yet Dad still introduced me as Linda. She does some art. I laughed outwardly, but felt smaller each time he said it, like shrinking back into the corner of that high school art room. Still, I endured, because some part of me believed that one day my work would speak loudly enough for itself. But as Dad's retirement drew near, so did the pressure. He wanted me in the company, in the mold, in line. The more I resisted, the more the silence grew heavier, and every visit home felt like sitting at the wrong table. What they never knew was this: I had stopped needing applause, but I still longed deep down for simple acknowledgement. That quiet hunger, that ache to be seen never left me. It burned beneath every polite smile, every swallowed word. They thought my silence meant surrender, but really, it was calm before the storm. The Greenwood Country Club glittered that night, chandeliers glowing above 200 guests. Michael gave his polished speech about Dad's mentorship. The mayor presented a key to the city. Applause rang like thunder, and pride radiated through the room like a crown. Then Dad stepped up, tuxedo gleaming, voice steady as he thanked colleagues and praised Mom's grace. He announced Michael as the future of Anderson Development. Applause followed, polite and certain. For a moment, I thought I'd be invisible again, erased from the legacy entirely. But then his eyes landed on me. The pause was heavy, stretching far too long. "You know," Dad said slowly, "I've been blessed with a wonderful family. My son Michael has made me prouder than any father could dream." Applause again. But his gaze pinned me in place across the room. "But tonight, I also want to acknowledge my daughter, Linda." My heart stopped. Maybe Aunt Susan was right. Maybe he would finally see me. "You," Dad said, his voice cutting like glass, "are the biggest disgrace to this family." Gasps rippled across the tables. Silverware stilled. Even the jazz quartet faltered mid-note. 200 faces turned toward me, shame burning hot across my skin. 11 years, Dad pressed on. "I've waited for you to grow up, to contribute. But instead, you waste your time with fingerpaints and computer games. While your brother builds a true career, you've given us nothing real." The words landed like blows, each syllable a public execution of my worth. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Michael sat pale, frozen, horrified. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some pitying, others eager to witness scandal. My champagne glass trembled. My pulse thundered louder than the applause had been. Every private humiliation was now broadcast for the city's elite to consume. Something inside me cracked. But it wasn't despair this time. It was anger. I rose slowly. Every eye followed me as I stood, dress suddenly armor. I met my father's gaze across the glittering room, voice steady and clear. "Perfect," I said. "Then erase me from your will, too." The crystal flute slipped from his hand, shattering against the marble floor. Gasps echoed through the silent ballroom, shards sparkling like broken trust. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking. The ballroom froze, silence pressing heavier than any chandelier's weight. I held my champagne glass high, words burning hotter than shame. "You want to know what I've contributed?" My voice cut like steel. "I've contributed my silence, my patience, my presence at every dinner. While you praised Michael, I built a business from nothing. I've designed campaigns that raised hundreds of thousands for nonprofits. I gave small businesses the tools to survive, to compete. But none of it mattered, because it didn't say Anderson Development." Faces turned from Dad to me, confusion shifting into dawning realization. "This isn't about fingerpaints," I continued, steady, unflinching. "It's about a father who'd rather shame than see his daughter." Michael half rose from his chair, but I stopped him with one look. "This is my turn. Don't you dare try to save this." "You want disgrace?" I asked, pointing toward the man at the podium. "Disgrace is humiliating your own daughter before 200 people. Disgrace is measuring success only in square footage and profit margins. Disgrace is ignoring the happiness of your own children for reputation." Gasps. Murmurs. A guest whispered, "She's right." Another nodded, stunned. Dad opened his mouth, but no sound came. For once, powerless. I turned slowly, sweeping my gaze across the stunned audience. "You want to record something worth whispering about?" My voice sharpened. "Record this. I will walk out of here and thrive. I will build a design firm so powerful you'll beg for work. And when my name shines in headlines, remember, you called me Disgrace." I drained the last drop of champagne, set the glass down hard. The click echoed like a gavel striking judgment. My judgment, not his. The crowd parted, silent, as I began walking toward the exit. Behind me, Dad finally croaked, "Linda, wait." His voice sounded small. I didn't stop, not yet. My heels hammered against marble, steady. At the doors, I turned once more, eyes locking on his. "Oh, and Dad," I said, my voice cool as ice. "Send my regards to whatever firm you hire to replace me." Gasps again. Guests wide-eyed, phones raised, history being captured live. Then I pushed the doors open and stepped into the night air. The first breath outside tasted like freedom. Sharp, clean, undeniable. The cold night wrapped around me, but inside I felt lighter. For the first time in years, no weight sat pressing on my chest. The silence of my phone, no family demands, felt almost holy. I walked to my car, not as the disgrace, but reborn. By sunrise, videos of the confrontation had spread across social media. Some called me brave. Some called me reckless. All of them watched. For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, they saw me clearly. Clients reached out. Emails filled with opportunities I'd only dreamed about. Not because of pity, but because they saw my strength. My work had value. My voice had value. And so did I. A week later, I signed my biggest contract to date. Not from Anderson Development, but from innovators who wanted authenticity. They said, "We want someone fearless, someone unafraid to stand apart." For years, I thought my difference was weakness. It wasn't. It was the very thing that made me unbreakable, unstoppable. My father's words no longer defined me. My own did. Yes, I lost his approval that night, but I gained myself. And that is worth more than any inheritance, any fleeting applause. To anyone who's been called the black sheep, hear this. You are not broken. You are not less. You are free. If this story struck a chord, comment your thoughts below. Hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs it. Remember, your worth is never measured by their approval, but by your truth.